And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:08 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, you know I'm never one to stir the pot, but Marshawn Lynch and Doug Hendrickson just dropped yet another episode of Politicking with no Gavin Newsom or mention of where Gavin Newsom is.
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
Wait, how can they do that?
It still says the show is Politicking with Marshawn, Doug, and Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom hasn't shown up in the last 3 episodes. He's now promoting his own podcast, but there's no addressing, is he still doing the podcast with Marshawn?
Okay, I get it. If you have a sitcom and someone was involved in a contract dispute with the network, and then all of a sudden they get replaced by someone else, you don't acknowledge it. It's like when Roseanne switched Becky's. But they're not even swapping him out for some other politician. He's just gone and they don't acknowledge it.
Well, maybe they think there'd be no reason to listen to this podcast without Gavin, but I got news for Marshawn. There was no reason to listen to that podcast with Gavin.
What they should do is replace him with Jerry Brown, so Jerry's just confused about who everyone else on the podcast is. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. So last night was some variation of the State of the Union address, a joint session of Congress where President Donald Trump addressed both the House, the Senate, and the American people. These, of course, typically take place in late January, sometime right around my birthday. But this time around, because we have a new president, when he put his hand on the Bible, took the oath of office, and gave a speech in January, that usually takes the place of a speech like this. He decided that he would address a joint session of Congress last night to just tell them where he sees the State of the Union as it stands right now. Now, if you watched it last night, what Donald Trump had to say wasn't anything that made the headlines. Why? Well, it was because of the behavior of the Democrats in the audience who brought these little cards. I guess they look like fans or maybe a racket that you would use to play ping pong with. Or if you're going to a silent auction, you can put it up and say, okay, I bid $20 for that lampshade. I bid $40 for that lampshade. Okay, I'm outbid. They had those signs up that said different things on them. Some of them had different statements about Elon Musk. Some of them said this is not normal. Some of them attacked President Trump for this or that. Whatever the case may be, they were holding those up all throughout the evening. There was a congressman from Texas, Al Green, who has a long ponytail, which you don't typically see on elderly men, who decided to get thrown out of the event last night. He kept interrupting the speech. He was waving his cane, and then security came and took him out, and he gave a bunch of interviews out in the hallway. You also had other members who walked out in the middle of the speech, apparently in a coordinated effort to show the American people that they weren't interested in what the president had to say. Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman from the Dallas area, gave interview after interview after interview where she dropped one profanity after another, giving her assessment of the speech. I'll tell you my takeaway from what we saw play out last night. The Democratic Party is going to lose control over who they nominate for president the next time. That became abundantly clear to me. Because when all of this chaos was going on, and when the news channels were evaluating what happened in Congress that night, one of the things that came out was that Hakeem Jeffries, who is the leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, he's the minority leader, he apparently met with his caucus before the speech and explicitly told them not to do that. He explicitly said, no stunts, no protests, no histrionics, sit there and listen to it, and then you can rebut what he said afterwards, but I don't want you to be the story. I want the story to be about him and whichever of his policies that we regard to be unpopular, and then we can go ahead and poke holes in his arguments after the speech. They apparently all agreed to do that, and then none of them followed through. None of them paid attention to what he had to say. And when you have one or two that don't pay attention, that's one thing. You're always going to have outliers. You're always going to have people who are interested in attention. You always have people who are not part of the pack. They have their own ideas. They're going to do what they're going to do. They might get under your skin, but that's just human nature. That's sociology. We know that human beings can be like that. But when virtually every single one of them totally ignores you, that's a different story. That means they're not paying attention to him. They're all doing their own thing. And when they're all doing their own thing, that means a couple of things. First of all, it means he's weak. It means that they don't believe that he can punish them in any real sort of way. It also means they don't believe he's right. They believe that causing disruptions was what their constituents wanted them to do. Their constituents are angry. They represent Democratic districts. Their constituents hate Donald Trump, and they needed to show their constituents that they hate Donald Trump just as much as them back home. So it doesn't matter what the leader has to say. We're going to do what we think is best. Take this sort of attitude and apply it to any other organization, and you tell me if it's going to work out in the long term. If you're the manager of a baseball team and you tell your base runner not to steal second base for whatever reason, you have a power hitter who's up and you think he's going to hit one in the gap, you think there's going to be an extra bases hit where your runner can score from first base, there's no need to risk being thrown out at second base. So I give you the sign to stay there and let the batter bat. And you, as the base runner, totally ignore me as the manager, and you try to steal second base and you get thrown out. If there are no consequences to that behavior, what's the point of having a manager? If you have a pitcher who's just getting shelled out there and you have someone warming up in the bullpen and you go out to take the pitcher out and replace the pitcher with someone in the bullpen and the pitcher says, I'm not going anywhere, get back in the dugout, that puts you in a real tough predicament. If you're the manager, either you go back in the dugout and you let the pitcher make the call, or you get involved in a great big fight on the mound so you can assert your authority. Last night, Hakeem Jeffries just went back in the dugout, and he let the pitcher stay in the game. When you have a situation like that, where no one is paying attention to the manager, where no one is paying attention to the leader, what you are rudderless. No one is on the same page. No one's singing from the same hymn book. Everyone is doing their own thing. And what that tells you is when it comes time for them to nominate someone to run for president, the normal protocol of who is the candidate that gets the endorsement, who's the candidate that gets the money, who's the candidate that gets the party behind them, that person usually wins. I'm not so sure that's going to happen this time. I'm not sure the candidate that the party machine produces is going to be the candidate that takes. And I don't think that members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, think that's the case either. This may be an upcoming cycle where a disruptor on the left ends up coming out of nowhere and becoming the nominee. It almost happened with Bernie Sanders, although it's hard to be a disruptor when you're 80 years old and you look like you're 104. This time around, it may be someone out of left field. The Democrats of late have been able to get their party preference through the process. Hillary Clinton in 2008, that was who they wanted, or in 2016 rather. They wanted Hillary Clinton to be the nominee. They did not want Joe Biden. They thought Joe Biden was too old. He was a weak candidate. Hillary Clinton, she's the winning ticket. This is who we want. Joe doesn't even run. We get Hillary Clinton through. In 2020, they were scared to death that Bernie Sanders was going to be the nominee. He was coming on real strong in those early primaries. The party wanted Joe Biden. They thought Joe Biden would be the steady hand of government. He would be the consensus choice, and he had the best chance of being elected. So fine. In 2020, they get Joe Biden. In 2024, they're scared to death that someone's going to run against Joe Biden. So they move heaven and earth, including changing their primary calendar all around, so it's rigged, so no one can take on Joe Biden in any realistic way. And then they had that awful debate performance, and then they rigged it so Kamala would be the nominee, and no one would be able to take it away from her. Those are 4 examples where the Democratic Party establishment got what they wanted because they control the process. This time around, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think any of their voters are listening to their shot callers, and I don't think any of their electeds are listening to their shot callers. From their point of view, the Democratic Party has given them horrible advice. The Democratic Party was the one that told them to stand by Joe Biden and not have anyone challenge him. The Democratic Party was the party who told them that Kamala Harris would win the election. And they ended up being wrong across the board. And now they're telling them to behave, be quiet, don't get thrown out, don't swear, don't create a scene, don't do any of that. And what did they all do last night? They did exactly that. When they start voting in early 2028 for president, and they start having their early primaries, the Democratic Party, the people who run the party at least, will have their preferred candidate. Whether or not it's the governor of Pennsylvania or Gavin Newsom or whomever, they're going to get behind someone they think is most electable. Because at their core, what they believe in most is winning the election. If they don't win the election, they can't spread the spoils around. They can't get their appointments. They can't get their deals with the government. They can't get any of the things that they're looking for. So what they want, first and foremost, is a winning horse. If they pick their winning horse and they assume that the Democratic Party, voters, and the establishment and everyone else is going to get behind that candidate, I think they're going to find out that they have about as much control of their voters as Hakeem Jeffries had over his members last night. The natives are clearly restless. They're not happy with what the Democratic electeds are doing in Washington, D.C., and I think they're going to start kicking tires on disruptors. And things that you would have thought were totally nuts and not possible 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, will suddenly become possible. Is it possible that they nominate someone like AOC? Maybe. Or Jasmine Crockett from Texas, the woman who swears in interview after interview? Maybe. I think candidates who you thought were on the fringes and could never in a million years win a primary for president in the Democratic Party, I think they are way more viable than you think. And all you have to do for proof of that is look at what happened last night and look at what's going on today. Are any of them being punished? No. What are they doing today? They're being celebrated by their people for creating a scene last night. Their voters are not angry with them. Their supporters on social media are not angry with them. The Democratic Party establishment, they're not happy because they think it's a bad look, and it was. But from the point of view of all of the people who created drama last night, they're the belle of the ball. And they're going to be rewarded for doing that. So behaving that way becomes the path of least resistance to being praised and to being showered with gifts and bookings on television and praise on social media and everything that they desire, everything that they seek. And I think that behavior is not going to be a one-off. That behavior is going to continue. They're going to continue to be rewarded, and it's going to result in them getting a very different kind of nominee for president in 2028. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to yesterday's show where we talked about Rob Bonta going after the prison guards, or I guess the juvie guards, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. You can listen to them when you're driving on the 101 freeway. You can listen to them when you're driving on Ventura Boulevard, but you cannot listen to them while you're driving on Topanga Canyon because that's closed.
In Topanga.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Herman's Hermits, starring Peter Noon at the Canyon in Agora Hills on April 4th. Tickets are on sale now at AXS.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by the Canyon, where music meets the soul. Good luck dialing.
Coming up next, we'll tell you how the Speaker of the California State Assembly is punishing members who are asking questions he doesn't want asked. In Sacramento, the Democrats have a supermajority in both houses of the state legislature, which means if they want something to pass, it passes, and they don't need a single Republican vote. That not only goes for regular legislation, it goes for the budget, too. That being said, there are still Republicans who exist in Sacramento, and some of them are attending committee meetings and asking questions that make the Democrats look bad and make their legislation look bad. That means the Speaker of the Assembly wants to cut that out. So, Randy, he booted a bunch of the vocal ones off their committees.
It's retaliation time in Sacramento. For more, here is the best when it comes to Capitol reporting. KCRA 3's Ashley Zavala.
Republicans represent the superminority here at the California State Capitol. They have little say on which laws are passed or how taxpayer dollars are used here in California.
They pretty much have no purpose.
No, but they can ask questions, so that's why they had to be muzzled.
Or how taxpayer dollars are used here in California. But yet, California's Democratic Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas stripped some of the most outspoken Republicans from their high-profile committee roles.
That is petty.
It really is. This guy, who is definitely not ready for prime time, seems to be more petulant than the last one, Anthony Rendon.
Here's a look at which Republicans and what each had to say.
It's just another day in this corrupt institution.
Assemblyman Carl DeMaio is one of 5 Republicans.
He's in the Assembly now?
He is.
I did not know that.
He's run for every office you can run for in San Diego and finally landed in the Assembly.
Assemblyman Carl DeMaio is one of 5 Republicans abruptly removed from his committees after publicly scrutinizing state spending.
We face a budget crisis, and the voters are angry with what's going on with their money. And, Mr. Speaker, I hope you can hear me.
He can't.
No.
I'm not backing down.
All this shows is
DeMaio's got quite the voice.
You know, he sang with Johnny Cash at one point in the past.
I'm not backing down.
all this shows is our Republican caucus is growing stronger and stronger.
Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo removed from multiple committees after her vocal criticism of California's high-speed rail project.
You can't criticize high-speed rail without getting punished in Sacramento?
No, that crowd regards high-speed rail as a smashing success, and anyone who says otherwise is spreading fake news.
And her support of the Trump administration's investigation into it.
To come after a freshman Republican shows that maybe not as all as well in the Democrat caucus as they'd like us to believe.
I made my first request to hear from Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas about this decision at 7:30 this morning. I didn't hear back, so here outside of the Assembly chamber, I waited this afternoon during floor session with the hopes that he would come out of those doors and we would be able to speak with him. But instead of coming out of these doors to get back to his office, the Speaker took a back entrance to avoid us.
That guy is remedial.
He's hiding from Ashley Zavala. He makes a stupid decision, cannot defend it, and so now is hiding from the news cameras.
Oh, he's going to be hiding for a while.
Didn't even get a phone call.
Assemblyman Joe Patterson removed as vice chairman of the Health Committee. He recently spoke out against the California legislature's use of non-disclosure agreements that legally keeps the use of taxpayer dollars secret.
Well, of course, you're going to get punished for that. You don't want people to actually see how the sausage is made.
And that's why he won't talk to Ashley.
This would have been my third year on the committee. And to not only remove me as vice chair, but also remove me from the committee altogether, it's just wrong. And it actually puts Californians in a less healthy situation now.
This isn't even a...
Well, okay, this guy has a very, very, very high opinion of himself. Me not being on that committee is going to make you less safe. Sure.
Well, if someone's not asking those questions, that's true. Whether it's him or someone else, the people of California deserve to have those questions answered.
This isn't even a silence of me personally. I think this is a silence of my district. And
Assemblyman David Tangipa removed as vice chairman of the...
I do like that name.
Oh, yeah. He was a football player for Fresno State.
Assemblyman David Tangipa removed as vice chairman of the Insurance Committee after criticizing California's handling of its insurance and affordability crisis.
You can't criticize Ricardo freaking Lara?
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Oh, we know.
Assemblyman David Tangipa removed as vice chairman of the Insurance Committee after criticizing California's handling of its insurance and affordability crisis.
Why? Because everything's going so great and we don't have an insurance crisis?
See, this is how we got here. Everyone just said, oh, yeah, things are going well. Nod, let's move things along. And now none of us can buy insurance. You have someone who's asking questions and, oh, we got to kick him off the committee because we can't have that.
if this was happening at the federal government and our majority party was removing the minority party, they'd claim right now that this is a dismantling of democracy.
It's not the first committee I've been removed from.
Assemblyman Bill Asaley recently criticized how some Democrats are unwilling to stand up to Governor Newsom. He is no longer vice chairman of the Elections Committee.
So he got kicked off of that committee for stating the truth, that the Assembly is afraid of Gavin Newsom.
They not only are afraid of Gavin Newsom, they're terrified of Gavin Newsom. And we do not have a separation of powers in California anymore. We have an imperialist governor who has complete control over what goes on in the state. But to Newsom's credit, it's not even like he took it. They just gave it to him. All during COVID-19, they could have asserted their authority at any moment in time during the shutdown. But they were so afraid of being blamed if it went sideways, they just gave him all of the power. Now, he was happy to take it, but they gave it to him. It's not like he took it from them. They willingly went along with it.
This is what people did in COVID. In the county, we gave all of the power to one lady who was not qualified.
Next slide.
Happy birthday, Babs.
I mean, what I've learned here in Sacramento.
What birthday are we celebrating?
Well, she was born on June in 1966, right?
Oh, so 666.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've learned here in Sacramento is if you're effective, if you speak truth to power, you say things that are inconvenient to the majority, they will retaliate, often in petty ways.
Republicans.
No cocktail parties for you, Asaley.
No, we won't be seeing you at Frank Fats.
Republicans will still have representation on these committees. The ones you just heard from, though, are just being replaced by those who are not as outspoken. Reporting at the state capitol, Ashley Zavala, KCRA 3 News.
A spokesman for Speaker Rivas sent a statement saying in part that he routinely addresses committee needs throughout the year. Rivas has served as Speaker for about a year and a half.
It's been a great time.
Oh, yes. Well done, Mr. Speaker. Well done. Well, it's not very often that Gavin Newsom gets on the wrong side of the public employee unions, but Randy, he woke up today on the wrong side of their bed.
Gavin Newsom signed an executive order that says starting in July, 220,000 state employees have to go back to work in person 4 days a week instead of the 2 days a week they were doing, and they are not happy about it.
It's kind of like his own little Elon Musk idea for California.
For more on the uproar in Sacramento over going back to in-person work, here's CBS Sacramento.
If I could retire now, I would. I would totally be out the door as soon as we had to come back.
First and all new at 5, frustration and outrage.
I mean, once you have gone living for many, many, many years of having to only wear pajamas to work, those suits don't fit anymore.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Believe me, I know.
First and all new at 5, frustration and outrage after Governor Newsom orders all state workers to double the time they're required back in office from 2 days a week to 4.
That change will start July 1st, impacting 224,000 state workers across California.
We have 224,000 state workers doing what?
What, are they working for the lottery?
Nearly 90,000 of them right here in Sacramento County, with some exceptions being made on a case-by-case basis.
We have team coverage for you tonight on this, the politics, pushback, and potential positives of this.
Hey, look at that alliteration. The politics, the pushback, and the positives.
Not enough for Mark Brown, though.
No, the gold standard when it comes to alliteration always will be the man from Channel 7.
Naked and unafraid and just a feet away from the Beverly Hills border. As the tents go up, the clothes come off, and now outraged locals are fighting back against the nudity, narcotics, and negative impact on their businesses.
The best.
Positives of this order. We start with tonight's politics at large. Steve is downtown with reaction from state workers and already some plans for protests over this, Steve.
We're not going back. Oh, wait, they tried that.
But don't you have to show up to the office to protest and picket with a sign?
Maybe they can do that on Zoom.
Yeah, this is an order for state workers I talked to that say it's going to cost their bottom line. Take into account parking and gas alone, and it adds to affordability problems.
Oh, yeah, this is something that is very specific to Sacramento, but a lot of these state agencies don't have parking garages, so the employees have to pay for their own parking, and they just jacked up the cost of parking in Sacramento to fix a budget hole.
Well, the state employees aren't going to like that, but it is the unions that always advocate for the tax increases.
Office order opposition.
There's some alliteration for you.
Office order opposition.
For me, it's going to cost me money.
Gail Jamerson is a decades-long state worker who says returning to her office 4 days a week will cost her hundreds of dollars a month.
I would say at least $400 to $500.
She's even made changes to her retirement plan to prepare.
Yesterday, I
can't retire now because I have to pay for gas.
So wait, because she has to pay for parking, she's making changes to her retirement plan?
Yes, it's that dramatic.
So what? She's going to go from 2 jars of cat food to 1?
Yesterday, I canceled my retirement contribution, anticipating, these changes.
I think I'm concerned with the increased carbon emissions.
Oh, just stop. You can just say, I don't want to. You can just say, I don't want to go back to work. I don't like those people.
No, but she's taking the Ed Begley Jr. argument.
I think I'm concerned with the increased carbon emissions.
You can just say, I hate traffic. I hate traffic. I wish I could work remotely. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Stop saying that you want to work remotely to save the planet.
What kind of state employee do you think she is? You think she's the warden of a prison?
I think I'm concerned with the increased carbon emissions, traffic.
Amber Grace has worked for the...
What do these people do?
Whatever it is, we definitely need our own Doge.
Amber Grace has worked for the state for 2 years.
It's unnecessary. Why? The work is being completed.
This frustrated response by state workers over Governor Gavin Newsom's return to office executive order California state workers' largest union is calling it out of touch, unnecessary, and wants it reversed.
State employees. Gavin's going to war with the unions.
I love this battle. This is like Iran going to war with Iraq, and the only thing I'm cheering for are casualties.
State employees should not be used as a political pawn. And really, it seems to be the only reason why we would be sent back.
First of all, you have to put everything that Governor Newsom does in the prism of future presidential politics. He's seeing mayors, governors, and even the president of the United States require workers to go back to work in an office.
This is all about 2028, Gavin.
Everything he's doing right now, from this to the podcast, is all about him running for president. That's all he cares about.
Democratic political strategist Steve Maviglio, often a critic of Newsom's, says this executive order is likely aimed at a national audience. President Trump issued an executive order for...
Can we get somebody who wants to be governor and just do things that affect the state for the state's own benefit?
Well, I can one-up you. We're going to go from one governor who doesn't want to be governor to another governor who's taking it as a consolation prize who definitely doesn't want to be governor.
I will repeat myself.
Yeah, you will.
President Trump issued an executive order for federal workers to return to office, and San Francisco's new mayor announced a 4-day return to office order for city workers last month.
And usually the way that they sell it, like Daniel Lurie and the mayor of Sacramento is selling, is, well, we have to do this because you got to understand all those sandwich shops are going out of business because there's no employees to get fat.
So they're doing this for the guys at Jersey Mike's?
Yes. You could figure out a different purpose for some of those buildings if people don't want to work downtown. If you're the state, you could be selling those buildings or converting them to housing. But no, let's force everyone back into the office, which they don't want to do, so the sandwich shop won't go out of business. That's the line they use.
The next thing you know, they're going to be using state money to advertise the fact that on Tuesdays you get double short points at Jersey Mike's.
And this fits into the box of having the state government be more efficient, which is certainly a topic of the day.
If I could retire now, I would.
Okay.
There's that can-do spirit.
If I could retire now, I would. I would totally.
I really want a deep dive investigation. All these people that they interviewed that work for the state, what is your job?
Yeah, if you're Gavin Newsom and you see her on TV saying that, don't you find out who she is and call her up the next morning and say, off to Leisure World, sweetheart?
Well, it would be, but Gavin doesn't watch the local news. It's only Fox for him.
Be out the door as soon as we had to come back.
Taking away telework and a new battle beginning between the governor.
Taking away telework, a new battle beginning. We get it. You love alliteration.
And a new battle beginning between the governor and state workers. And we are just about 24 hours into this order being announced publicly already. The SEIU 1000, the state's largest state employee union, has announced an organized protest at the Cal HR headquarters next week.
They're going to protest in person about how they don't want to work in person.
Well, if you want to protest in a place where Gavin's going to see you, you better protest outside the set of Fox and Friends. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Greg writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Now that Newsom is telling everyone to get out of their house and go back to work, are we going to catch him working at home with a bag of Cheetos and a bottle of wine, much like when he told people to stay home and he was caught at the French Laundry?
It's possible. In fact, it's very possible. Maybe he tapes that podcast at home.